My perfect sister ignored me, my whole life, and cheated on her husband. I exposed her, and she destroyed my parents by stealing their house. But years later, they came begging for forgiveness. I'm 29 years old. I work in it, consulting, and I need to tell this story because what happened over the last few years basically destroyed my family. Or, well, what was left of it. And the thing is, part of me feels like I should feel bad about how it all ended. But honestly, after everything I went through, I can't. Not completely. You know what I mean? I guess I should start at the beginning, when we were kids. My sister Samantha is 3 years older than me, and for as long as I can remember, she was my parents' golden child. And when I say golden child, I don't mean they bought her more toys or anything like that. It was much deeper than that. It was like she could do anything, and my parents would find a way to justify it or celebrate it. While I don't know. I was just the son who was there, taking up space. I remember when she got good grades, it was a celebration at home, special dinner, and the whole show. But when I got the same grades or even better, it was like, oh, well, good job, Andrew. Nothing more. They wouldn't even look up from the newspaper sometimes, to be honest. And it's not like I was a bad son, you know? I helped around the house, got good grades, didn't get into trouble. But there was always this feeling that nothing I did was enough, that I was never going to be at Samantha's level in my parents' eyes. She was the perfect one, the brilliant one, the one who was going to do great things in life. I was just Andrew, the younger brother who was there. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there that Samantha had learned from a young age that she could get away with anything because mom and dad were always going to be on her side. When I turned 18, I basically left home as soon as I could. I went to study in another city, got a part-time job, and honestly, it was a relief to be away. I'd visit during holidays and stuff, but I kept my distance. Samantha stayed close to my parents. Worked in marketing for a big company, made good money, and my parents wouldn't stop talking about how successful she was. I finished my degree in systems, got a good job in consulting. But when I mentioned it, it was like, oh yeah, that's great, Andrew. But let me tell you what Samantha did last week. It was always like that. When I was about 24, I met Rachel at a tech conference. She worked in the same field as me, was smart, funny, and above all, she understood me. I told her about my family, about what it was like growing up with Samantha, and she was the first person who really validated what I felt, you know? She told me I wasn't crazy, that what I was describing was classic favoritism, and that I had every right to feel the way I did. We started dating and she quickly became my person, my real family, let's say. A year later, Samantha married Jacob. This guy was, honestly, way too good for her. He worked as a civil engineer, was responsible, mature, treated everyone well. At the wedding, my parents were beaming. Mom wouldn't stop crying with happiness. Dad gave speeches about how proud he was of his daughter. I went with Rachel and we were basically invisible all day. Nobody asked us how things were going, if we had plans to get married, nothing. It was all Samantha and Jacob. Samantha and Jacob. Rachel squeezed my hand during the reception and whispered to me, breathe, just a few more hours. And she was right. We just had to hang on a little longer, and then we could leave. Things continued pretty much the same for a couple of years. I'd see my family at Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, the obligatory stuff. Samantha and Jacob seemed happy, or at least that's what they showed. But about 3 years ago, everything started to change. Samantha got a new job at another company, more prestigious according to her, and she started acting different. More distant with Jacob, more glued to her phone, arriving late to family gatherings, or just not showing up because she had work. My parents, obviously, defended her, said she was working hard, building her career, that we should all be proud of her. One day, this was about 2.5 years ago, more or less, I went to visit my parents because it was my mom's birthday. Samantha was also there with Jacob, and at one point she went outside to make a call, left her phone on the living room table. The phone started vibrating like crazy with messages, and I casually looked at the screen, not with the intention of snooping or anything, but the messages were appearing right there on the lock screen. And what I saw made my blood run cold. Seriously. They were messages from a guy named Noah, and they weren't normal work messages or from a friend. They were explicit messages, romantic, and it was super clear they were having an affair. I just stood there like an idiot, not knowing what to do. Part of me thought, it's not my problem. I shouldn't get involved. But the other part, the part that had seen Jacob be such a good guy to my sister, that had seen him treat her like a queen when she clearly didn't deserve it, that part was furious. And besides, I'm not going to lie, there was a small part of me that thought, finally you're going to have to face consequences for something, Samantha. Finally, people are going to see who you really are. I didn't say anything that day, but I started paying more attention. Over the next few weeks, when we'd coincide at family events, I noticed things. How Samantha would laugh in a certain way when she received messages, how she'd find excuses to step away and make calls, how Jacob looked more and more confused and sad. And then what really changed, everything happened. My parents organized a barbecue at their house. This was like in April of last year, I think. The whole family was invited, and Samantha asked my parents if she could bring a coworker because he was new in town and didn't know anyone. My parents obviously said yes, because Samantha never heard a no. The guy arrived, and it was Noah. As soon as I saw him, I knew it was him, the one from the phone. He was like, how do I put it? Too confident, too flirty, one of those guys who think they can charm anyone with a smile. During the barbecue, Noah kept finding excuses to be near Samantha, and she acted like nothing was happening, like he was just a colleague. But I saw them, the looks they gave each other, how they'd accidentally brush against each other when they passed by. Jacob was there, serving burgers, being the perfect host, completely oblivious to what was happening literally in front of him. And my parents, God, they were delighted with Noah, saying how great that Samantha had such nice colleagues, how lucky to work in such a friendly environment. And then Noah crossed the line. Rachel was with me by the dessert table, and Noah came over, looked her up and down in a super uncomfortable way and said something like, no wonder Andrew looks so happy lately. If I had a woman like that, I wouldn't let her go either. Rachel turned red, not from embarrassment but from anger, and I felt my blood boil. I told him, hey man, relax, okay? And he just laughed, raised his hands like saying, I'm just being friendly, don't get mad. But he said it with that smile that made it clear he knew exactly what he was doing, that he was testing boundaries, being a jerk because he could. That night, after the barbecue, Rachel and I talked in the car before leaving. She was upset, I was upset, and we were both fed up. And she told me, Andrew, you have to tell Jacob. He deserves to know. And I knew she was right, but I also knew that if I did it, my family was going to explode. It was going to be a disaster. But the thing is, what did I care anymore? My family had never treated me like I mattered anyway, you know what I mean? So, I decided that yes, I was going to tell Jacob, but I needed solid proof, because I knew Samantha was going to deny everything, and my parents were going to believe her. I spent the next 2 weeks, literally, obsessed with getting evidence. It sounds sick, I know, but I felt it was the right thing. One day, I saw that Samantha posted on social media that she was at a work conference in another city for the weekend. Jacob commented on the post something like, I miss you, come back soon. But I had a hunch. I called a friend who lives in that city and asked him to go to the hotel where Samantha was supposedly staying for the conference. And yes, my friend saw them, Samantha and Noah entering the hotel together, holding hands, acting like a couple. My friend sent me photos, videos, everything. I waited for the next family event, which was about 3 weeks later, another Sunday lunch at my parents' house. I arrived with Rachel, and Samantha was there with Jacob, acting like the perfect wife. I had my laptop in the car, with all the evidence saved. During lunch, I couldn't concentrate. My hands were sweating. Rachel was squeezing my leg under the table, like telling me, are you sure about this? And yes, I was sure. After eating, when we were all in the living room having coffee, I said, hey, I have something to show everyone. Samantha looked at me with that face of, what's he going to say now? Boring as always. My parents looked confused. Jacob just smiled, thinking I was going to show vacation photos or something. I went to the car, grabbed my laptop, came back and connected it to the living room TV, and I showed them everything. The messages, the hotel photos, the videos. The room fell into complete silence, like not even a fly could be heard. Jacob went pale, his hands started trembling. My parents looked horrified, but I couldn't tell if it was horror toward Samantha or toward me for exposing this. And Samantha, God, Samantha looked at me with a hatred I'd never seen in her. She got up and screamed, "How dare you? How dare you spy on me? Invade my privacy. You're sick." And I just said, "I'm sorry, Jacob. You deserve to know the truth." Jacob got up without saying a word, took his keys, and left. Samantha ran after him, screaming his name, but he didn't turn around. And then, the real hell started. My parents turned toward me, and my dad, with a voice I'd never heard from him, said to me, "What did you just do?" I tried to explain, say that Jacob deserved to know, that I couldn't stay silent watching him get cheated on. But my mom interrupted me and said, "You just destroyed your sister's marriage. You just humiliated her in front of the whole family." And I couldn't believe it. They were literally blaming me, not Samantha for having the affair, but me for exposing it. Samantha came back after Jacob left, crying, but they weren't tears of regret, they were tears of rage. She yelled everything at me, that I'd always been resentful, that I'd always been envious of her, that I'd ruined her life because I couldn't stand to see her happy. My parents didn't say anything to defend me, they just consoled her. And then my dad said to me, "Andrew, you have two options. Either you apologize to your sister and to all of us for what you did, or you leave and don't come back." And I just stood there thinking, really? Are you really giving me an ultimatum after everything that happened? Rachel took my hand and said quietly, "Let's go. It's not worth it." And she was right. So I got up, looked at my parents and told them, "I'm not going to apologize for telling the truth, and if that means you're disowning me as a son, go ahead." And we left. The next few weeks were horrible, honestly. I wasn't sleeping well. I felt guilty even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. You know what I mean? Rachel was my rock during that time. She constantly reminded me that I'd done the right thing, that Jacob deserved to know. I found out through a cousin that Jacob had asked for a divorce immediately, that he'd moved all his stuff out of the house he shared with Samantha in literally 2 days. I also found out that Samantha had told everyone that I was a liar, that I'd manipulated the photos and videos, that it was all fake. But Jacob knew the truth. He'd confronted her, and she'd admitted everything, so her lies didn't work with him. About 2 months after all that, Rachel and I decided we needed a radical change. We both worked in consulting. We could basically do our work from anywhere. So we applied for transfers to offices in another state, about 8 hours from where my family lived, and we moved. It was liberating, honestly. Starting over in a place where nobody knew anything about my family, where I could just be Andrew, not Samantha's brother or the son who ruined his sister's marriage. We got a small but nice apartment, made new friends, and for the first time in my life I felt like I could breathe without that constant burden of never being enough. Rachel and I got engaged about 6 months after moving. It was super simple, nothing fancy, just the two of us on a hike in the mountains near our new city. I proposed with a ring I'd been saving to buy for months, and she said yes without hesitation. We got married a year later. It was a small wedding, just close friends. And it was perfect. It was the best day of my life. No drama, no having to worry about Samantha hogging the attention or my parents making me feel less. I thought that was the end of the story. You know? That I'd close that chapter of my life and would never hear from them again. But the universe had other plans, apparently. About 6 months ago, Rachel and I went to a McDonald's in our new city, one that's about 20 minutes from our apartment. I was driving and she was checking her phone, and when we got to the drive-thru to order, the voice that came out of the speaker made my blood run cold. I recognized it immediately. It was Samantha. I couldn't believe it. I literally went mute. Rachel looked at me and said, What's wrong? And I just shook my head, unable to speak. We ordered, and when we got to the window to pay, there she was. Samantha, in a McDonald's uniform, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, looking tired and much older than someone her age should look. She was about 32 at the time. We made eye contact and she went pale. She processed the payment without saying a word, gave us the food, and when she was about to close the window, I said, "Samantha." She stopped, looked at me, and said, "Andrew." And I didn't know what to say. Honestly, Rachel was looking at me, waiting for me to say something, and all I could think of was, "What are you doing here?" And she just said, "I work here. It's obvious, isn't it?" And then she added, "Can we talk? Do you have time?" And I didn't know if I wanted to talk to her, but curiosity won. I told her, "When do you get off?" And she said, "In 30 minutes. So, Rachel and I parked the car in the McDonald's parking lot and waited. When Samantha came out, she looked worse than she looked through the drive-through window. She got in our car, in the back seat, and the silence was awkward for a moment, and then she started talking. She told me that after the divorce, everything had gone to hell for her, that my parents had supported her at first, had let her live with them, but that Noah, the affair guy, had started pressuring her to leave with him, to leave everything and start a new life together. And she, being Samantha, thought that was romantic, that it was what she needed. So she left with him to another city, which turned out to be the city where Rachel and I now lived. What a coincidence. But Noah turned out to be a manipulator and an abuser, according to her. That he'd isolated her from everyone, that he'd convinced her to quit her marketing job, that he controlled all her money, that he verbally and sometimes physically abused her. She said she'd finally managed to leave him about 2 months ago, that she'd escaped and now lived in a rented room with 3 other people, that the McDonald's job was the only thing she'd been able to get because Noah had ruined her professional reputation and she had no references. And then she looked at me and said, "I need your help, Andrew. I need money to get out of here, to start over." And I just sat there processing everything she'd just said, feeling a weird mix of things. Part of me felt sorry for her, seriously, because nobody deserves to be abused, not even Samantha. But another part of me, a part I'm not proud to admit, felt a kind of poetic justice in all this, you know? Like she was finally living the consequences of her decisions. I told her I couldn't just give her money like that I needed time to think about it, to talk to Rachel. Samantha got angry, said something like, "Of course. As always. I can never count on you. You've always been selfish." And that made me angry because, really? I was the selfish one? After everything that had happened, she had the nerve to call me selfish? But I didn't say anything, just told her to give me her number and I'd contact her. She got out of the car and walked toward the parking lot where, I guess she had her own car or maybe took the bus, I don't know. Rachel and I talked the whole way home. She told me she'd understand if I wanted to help Samantha, that she wasn't going to judge me for it, but that I also had to think about us, about our life, about whether I really wanted to reopen that door. And she was right, as always. I decided I was going to investigate a little more before making any decision. I sent a message to my cousin, the same one who'd helped me before, and asked him to find out what had happened with my parents, because if Samantha was in this city, where were they? What I found out was worse than I imagined. My cousin told me that Samantha, before leaving with Noah, had convinced my parents to sign some papers to help her with her financial situation after the divorce. She'd told them she needed the family house in her name temporarily, for legal reasons, related to Jacob's divorce, something about protecting family assets or something like that. I don't know the details well because my cousin didn't know much either. But the thing is, she'd made them sign a power of attorney or something like that and basically taken the house from them. And not only that, she'd sold it with Noah. They'd sold my parents' house, the house where we grew up, where my parents had lived for over 30 years, and they'd taken off with the money. My parents now lived in a small, run-down apartment in a not-so-good area of their city, surviving on their pension and some savings they had left. They were broke. And Samantha hadn't just stolen their house, but also their dignity, their security, everything. And my parents, Even after all that, according to my cousin, still didn't want to speak badly of her. They kept saying she was going through a difficult time, that Noah had manipulated to her, that it wasn't her fault. It made me so angry to hear that. I literally wanted to scream at them. When are you going to open your eyes and see who your perfect daughter really is? I decided I needed to confront Samantha, but I wasn't going to give her money. I met with her at a cafe near the McDonald's where she worked. She arrived looking just as tired, and when she sat across from me, she tried to put on a victim face, but I wasn't going to fall for that. I told her directly, "I know what you did with Mom and Dad's house." Her face changed immediately. The mask fell for a second, and I saw something in her eyes. I don't know if it was guilt or just anger at being caught again. And then she started with the excuses, that Noah had pressured her, that she didn't want to do it, that she needed the money to escape from him, that she was going to give them back the house or the money eventually. All lies. I could see right through her. I told her I wasn't going to give her a single cent, but that I was going to give her information about shelters for women in domestic violence situations, help numbers, legal resources, that if she was really in an abusive relationship, she needed to seek professional help, not money from me. She got angry, told me I was a bad brother, that I'd always wanted to see her fail, that I enjoyed seeing her suffer. And maybe she was partly right. Maybe there was a part of me that found some satisfaction in her finally facing real consequences. But it was also true that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again, manipulate anyone else. After that meeting, I decided to contact my parents. I hadn't seen or spoken to them in almost 3 years. I sent them a letter. Yes, a physical letter, because I didn't have their new phone or current email address, so I sent it to my cousin's address and asked him to deliver it to them. In the letter, I explained that I knew what had happened with Samantha and the house, that I understood they were, probably still angry with me, but that I wanted to see them, that we needed to talk. I honestly didn't expect a response, but they called me about a week later. My mom, with a broken voice, told me they wanted to see me, that they needed to see me. So I drove the 8 hours back to my hometown, alone, because Rachel had work and I also didn't want to expose her to more family drama. I met them at the house, well, the apartment where they now lived. And when I arrived and saw the place, my heart sank. It was an old building, with stained walls, stairs that creaked. The apartment had 2 small rooms, a living room that also served as a dining room, a tiny kitchen. They barely had any furniture, just the essentials. It was depressing. I can't describe it any other way. My parents looked old, much older than they should look. My dad was about 63, my mom 61, but they looked 75. We sat in the living room, and there was a long silence before anyone said anything. And then my dad, with tears in his eyes that I'd never seen, told me, "Andrew, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything we did to you. I'm sorry for not seeing you. I'm sorry for choosing your sister over you your whole life. Your mom and I have been talking a lot these last few months, since Samantha did this to us, and we realized that you were the one who was always there, who always did the right thing, and we punished you for it." And my mom added, "You were right about Samantha. You were right about everything, and we were too blind or too proud to see it." I didn't know what to say. I'd waited for that moment for years, literally years, and now that it was happening, I felt empty. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I'd feel, or the vindication. Just sadness. Sadness for all the lost time, for all the unnecessary pain. I told them I appreciated their apology, that it meant something to me, but that I needed time, that I couldn't just forget 30 years of being ignored and belittled. They understood, or at least said they did. We talked for hours about everything, about Samantha, about how she'd manipulated them, about Noah, about Jacob's divorce, about my life with Rachel, about everything. They asked about her, about our wedding, and when I told them we'd gotten married 2 years ago, my mom started crying and said she regretted not being there. And I regretted it too, honestly, because despite everything, they were my parents, and a part of me was always going to love them, even though they'd hurt me so much. Before I left that day, I left them a check. It wasn't a huge amount because Rachel and I weren't swimming in money either, but it was enough for them to move to a better apartment, in a safer area, have a little financial breathing room. My dad tried to refuse it, but I told him, "Take it, please. It's not for you, it's for me, because I need to know you're okay so I can move forward." And they took it, and they hugged me, and it was the first time in my life I felt they really saw me as their son, not just as Samantha's shadow. 6 months have passed since then. My parents moved to a better apartment, nothing fancy but decent. We talk on the phone every 2 weeks or so. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly. It's not perfect, it probably never will be, but it's something. Rachel and my parents finally met about 2 months ago when they visited us for a weekend, and it was awkward at first but ended up being good. My parents apologized to her too, for never including her, for not valuing her, and she was gracious about it. Said something like, "Well, at least now I know where Andrew got that feeling invisible thing from," and we all laughed even though it was an uncomfortable truth. As for Samantha, I haven't heard from her directly again. My parents told me she tried to contact them a few months ago asking for help again, but they refused. They told her she needed to take responsibility for what she did, to seek professional help, that they weren't going to keep enabling her behavior. I don't know if she did or not. Honestly, it's not my problem anymore. I gave her information about resources for women in abusive situations. That was the most I could do and the most I wanted to do. Whether she decided to use them or not is her choice, not my responsibility. Sometimes I think about everything that happened, and I wonder if I did the right thing. Exposing Samantha's affair, if I should have kept quiet, if I should have handled things differently. But then I think about Jacob, who's now married again to someone who really values him, and I think, yes, I did the right thing. And I think about my parents, who, even though it took losing everything for them to realize it, I finally saw the truth. And I think maybe everything had to happen this way for us to get to this point where we are now, which isn't perfect, but it's honest, you know? Rachel and I are still in our city, far from all that drama. We're thinking about buying a house next year if everything goes well with our jobs. Sometimes she asks me if I regret cutting ties with my family for so long, and I tell her no, because those years allowed me to find myself, build my own life without Samantha's constant shadow, without the feeling of never being enough. And now that I'm rebuilding a relationship with my parents, I'm doing it from a place of strength, from a place where I know my worth, and that makes all the difference. I don't know what the future holds for Samantha, honestly. Part of me hopes she gets the help she needs, that she changes, that she becomes a better person. But another part of me, the realistic part, knows it's unlikely. Some people just don't change, especially when they've spent their whole life being enabled in their bad behavior. And that's okay, I guess. It's not my responsibility to fix her or save her. Not anymore. The last time I talked to my mom on the phone, she said something that stuck with me. She said, "Andrew, we owe you so much, not just the money you gave us, but a childhood, a life where you felt loved and valued, and we can never give you that back." And I told her, "I know, Mom, but I don't need you to give it back. I just need us to move forward from here." And she said yes, that's what they were going to do. And I guess that's the best I can ask for at this point. You know what I mean? I can't change the past. I can't get back those years where I felt invisible, but I can control how I move forward from here. And that's enough for now. That's enough.